Hey, hello there, you awakened wonders, you fire walkers, you glorious souls. Keep your heart open in spite of the constant enticement to dumb down and become one of their fools, one of their drones. I'm talking to you, Slappy T, stay awake. I'm talking to you, KRG0516, out in our Rumble chat right now, talking about Amishness, curiously enough. Hey, Joey Yodo and Token Robot, I'm chatting to you all, Mr. Red Fox. And over in our Awakened Wonder chat in locals, I'm saying hello to Homegrown27. They love the dog. He's such a good boy. He's such a good boy. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Ireland riots and what it reveals about the corporate globalist agenda and the rhetoric of, the rhetoric of calling people far right if they dissent, if they stray from your prescribed narratives. We'll be talking a little bit about the Wuhan lab leak being more openly discussed in certain contexts, but not others. And we're talking, too, about Liz Cheney's new book. And watch how Jake Tapper on, is he CNN or MSNBC? CNN, you know Jake Tapper, don't you? He's one of the, he might be a beautiful human being for all I know, but generally when I see him, he is amplifying the agenda of the dominator culture. Him sort of chuckling at the idea that Trump might be depressed. I cannot imagine a depressed Trump. We'll be broadcasting, or streaming at least, on YouTube for the first 15 minutes. So you can be an awakened wonder there. Join us there. Watch what you say in that chat, though, because if you stray away from WHO guidelines, you will automatically be impinging upon YouTube's edicts. We're going to eventually you'll have to join us over on Rumble because the speech is going to get so free. For example, we'll be talking about a military insider who's asking why so many military personnel are suddenly getting curious heart disease. Let us know in the chat why you think it might be. It's Christmas time. What you don't need are peculiar symbols and signs. Not if you're superstitious. You don't want to see a Christmas tree tumbling down like the walls of Jericho.
Near the White House, the National Park Service, they told us just within the last 15 minutes that a big gust of wind knocked over the national...
A big gust of wind.
Christmas tree. It's all set for a big tree...
Knocked over our ideology. I mean Christmas tree.
Ceremony on Thursday. Ardelia Gonsalves just arrived on the scene. So, Delia, we know that the National Park Service is assessing the damage.
It's very dispiriting to see that Christmas tree laying there, dormant, passive, inactive, rather like the president that it's a symbol of.
What can you see from your vantage point?
Unfortunately, we can't see a whole lot. We did circle around the ellipse for some time, but we can see this massive crane that they brought in, and that crane is working very carefully to try to upright that.
Gotta upright that tree, gotta upright this administration, gotta upright our faith in the system when deep down we're beginning to recognize that it's an absolute illusion held together by corporate interests and propaganda. This tree functioning as a symbol, if you will, of our falling and failing administration. Only if it were Joe Biden himself draped in fairy lights taking a tumble could it be more apposite. This is fantastic. In a minute, we'll show you some legacy media reporting on escalating tensions between the United States and China and how it continually casts U.S. military-industrial complex interests as being in the right, even when it sometimes seems like they're the aggressor. You'll love that, because remember the weather balloon? Remember that Chinese weather balloon when we were all sort of excited about that? It's really interesting to contrast this warship with that weather balloon, and also to posit and to ponder what is the most significant event. Is it this warship in Chinese waters or international waters? It depends on whose analysis you believe. Or the APEC meeting between Xi and Biden in San Francisco, where they cleansed the streets of the homeless in a kind of purge, a pogrom of homelessness, in order that Xi had a better visit, and so that various CEOs, including Larry Fink, could meet up with Xi. What is real? The military crisis that's escalating, or the kind of corporate unity and financial togetherness as demonstrated at APEC? Which reality do you think is more significant? Say, put one in the chat if you think the military reality will determine Chinese and American relations, or 2, if you think it will be economically and financially determined. Someone says in the chat, not a program. You're right, because I think that means execution, doesn't it? Murder. Long-time listener that said that. Thank you for giving me a little bit of a steer there. Hey, let's have a look at this. A top US health official, this is an amazing story, has admitted that he and potentially everyone's favourite for 2. You guys think that's 2. Do you think it's the economic and financial then, huh? That's interesting. We'll continue to discuss it. A top official has revealed that they deliberately chose to downplay, at minimum, downplay the potential origins of coronavirus in a lab. We're still on YouTube, so we'll handle this cautiously, because when you see this military insider talking about heart disease, you might jump to some conclusions, and your heart might jump as well if you don't be careful what medication you take.
Top US health official has admitted he and a team of other leading scientists deliberately chose to downplay suggestions the COVID-19 pandemic originated in a Chinese lab leak. Robert Cadlick explained why in a bombshell Sky News documentary.
What we were trying to do was trying to make sure that politically that you would not get into a situation where people would make accusations or allegations, but quite honestly what happened was the exact opposite.
It did happen. The opposite did happen, because you can't trust those institutions if they try to control information. I saw a fascinating conversation on Irish TV about the riots and the origins of the riots. People are saying that you shouldn't report that the violence was conducted by a migrant because it's incendiary to reveal that information. And suddenly you're in a position where you have to decide, do you want the legacy media to be the gatekeepers of what information you gain access to? Don't give them that information. That might make them misbehave. It's extraordinary to me that what is assumed is a parental relationship between you and the state. The state are essentially the adults, and we're kind of children, and the legacy media amplify their messaging, that we're supposed to think it's kind of normal that they contain and control the information that we gain access to. In the chat over on Rumble, Woodsky says he sounds like a South Park character. I think he means the whistleblower, but he could mean me.
You and Fauci in those discussions just wanted to turn the rhetoric down. Is that
correct? That was it.
The doco, What Really Happened in Wuhan, the next chapter, also exposes extensive attempts to make the public think it was a natural virus. Joining us now is the journalist behind the investigation, Sky News host Sharri Markson. Good morning to you.
Morning, Sharri.
You've been following this for years, and most of it, it's not new, is it, the theory that it was a conspiracy? Why are these bombshells coming out now?
I've been investigating this for 3.5 years now. I've written a book.
Yeah, we've been investigating it. We've all been investigating it. What's interesting is in our country, there's a COVID inquiry, a government inquiry that's been sort of conducted very publicly. But whenever during the inquiry they go near any really important information that implies or infers that this is a complex and necessarily global problem, because it was a pandemic, it was global, I suppose, by its very nature, they shut that down pretty fast. I'm going to show you my incredible powers of prescience now and tell you that the conclusion of the COVID inquiry will be, oh, there are 1 or 2 bad apples within the government, these mistakes were made, and no one will say, do you know what happened? Is this situation was exploited to legitimise regulation and authoritarianism that elsewise would have been rejected out of hand. It is extraordinary the way that our culture was amended. It was kind of like social engineering. Did you guys think that? Put a Y in the chat if you think so. Sticker Mule ain't my baby, says Terence on Snaker. I tell you what, Sticker Mule are good guys. They would not eat a baby, not under any circumstances.
We did a first documentary 2 years ago. This new documentary that aired last night on Sky News. For it, as you just saw, we had one of the insiders who worked with Anthony Fauci. He reveals that they decided to deliberately downplay the notion that this came from a lab. That then became a conspiracy theory. He now says he feels obligated to speak out because it looks like he believes, based on his investigation, that it did eventuate from genetic engineering at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So these are quite amazing revelations.
Absolutely. So US Chief Medical Officer Anthony Fauci, at the time, of course, what did he stand to gain by covering it up?
Well, his agency had been among several United States agencies that were funding the research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Oh no, it's such a terrible mess, isn't it? Can you see the kind of reckoning that needs to take place? Any legitimate inquiry into what happened in the last 3 years would involve, I suppose, looking at the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, the CIA, the British government, the WHO. In a sense, the entire complex would quake if you were to look at this assiduously, if you were to look at it diligently, because what was revealed, the aperture that opened in that period was, there are a set of globalist interests that are whose interests converge, both economically and in terms of political power, and we're witnessing it right now. Slowly, incrementally, you'll get this information, but I wonder if you'll get the change that is required if you read into the degree of information that's now becoming available.
So Robert Kadlec, that health official, told us last night that Fauci would have been concerned for his own reputation.
Trump looking at Fauci. No, don't like this guy.
And that of his institute, if it eventuated that his agency had funded the very research that sparked this pandemic. And that is a live possibility.
So this affected everyone across the world, right? So downplaying it at the very beginning, how damaging was that?
Look, 7 million people or more have died as a result of COVID-19. It still affects all of our lives. Economies were shut down. But it's not just about justice for the millions of people who have died, why we need to know how this pandemic began, but it's to prevent another one. And if we don't learn the lessons, if we don't...
Well, luckily, there's no gain-of-function research going on anywhere in the world right now, and certainly no biolabs in Ukraine, and no curious relationships between Ukrainian energy companies and the Biden family. Now, in a completely unrelated video, a Navy medical officer called Lieutenant Ted Macy has revealed a rise in heart issues in active naval officers. Let me know in the chat if you've got any theories as to what could be causing this sharp spike in heart disease in the military.
Start to regulate this very...
Not you. We've seen enough of your propaganda. Here he is.
So in July, Undersecretary Cisneros acknowledged the DMED data, the database working properly, and also acknowledged things such as myocarditis rising 151%. So what I did, I went in today, I'm doing the same thing, 5-year average, however, I'm comparing it to 2022, and I only am using fixed wing pilots and helicopter pilots, active duty. So we get hypertensive disease.
Carl Rhino says it's being caused by white supremacy. Let's look into that.
36%. Ischemic heart disease, 69%. Pulmonary heart disease, 62%.
Nefarious monster, I'm not going to be reading your answers until you return to the scriptural and religious aspect of your nature.
Heart failure, 973%. Other forms of heart disease, 63%. Cardiomyopathy, 152%.
There you go. It's pretty extraordinary set of circumstances there. Heart disease, what's that? It's a 973% rise. That's a pretty significant rise. What's causing all of this stuff? We need an inquiry. A proper inquiry. Have a listen to this. This is Liz Cheney appearing on Jake. It's not Liz Cheney, actually. They're discussing Liz Cheney's new book on Jake Tapper's television program on the legacy media. Look at how, I think they get really excited at the idea that Trump is depressed. Let me know in the chat. Can you imagine, whether you like Trump or not, can you imagine him becoming depressed? I just can't imagine him having depression as part of his psychological makeup.
In our politics lead, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming delivering a devastating portrait of the Republican Party and former President Donald Trump. It's part of her new memoir due out next week. It's called Oath and Honor. CNN exclusively obtained a copy of the
Can I see what that book looks like, though? Sort of blatant advertising.
book, and CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel is here with all the juicy details. And Jamie, you tell me that Liz Cheney does not hold back.
She does not. She names names. She has emails, text messages. I think the book is extraordinary because it goes behind the scenes. And for the first time, you're hearing details about her Republican colleagues, about the Republican Party, and really their cowardice is the word she uses in their support of Donald Trump. And here's just from one excerpt of the book. She says that McCarthy told her that he had just spoken to Trump and that McCarthy says, quote, he knows it's over. He just needs to go through all the stages of grief. Cheney then writes that it's
Trump won't go through normal stages of grief like denial and anger and acceptance. It will just be sort of full-on Trump confidence, enthusiasm, upbeat ignorance.
For Rye's sense of humor that the stages of grief also apparently.
JPW 2730. Do not give your dog treats when he begs for them. You are rewarding begging. You've stopped. We're trying to talk about the power dynamics in American politics. We're trying to talk about MSNBC, CNN, and other mainstream media outlets' inability to convey honest, authentic news, to hold power to account. And you're worried that I'm not feeding... You're probably right, though. It is rewarding begging, isn't it? You're right. I need to amend the way I'm treating that dog. The reason I think this is interesting is there's such an ongoing appetite on MSNBC and CNN and those kind of outlets to condemn Trump without ever addressing the kind of emotion that led to Trump's success in the first place, a total loss of faith in the various institutions that govern American political life, whether those are state or corporate, just a complete sort of inner loss of faith in the direction of the country, a loss of spiritual connection. And it never ever is able to address that somehow he has a kind of appeal precisely because he doesn't ever seem to get depressed or comfort eat. But that's not what Liz Cheney claims later in the book. Have a look at this.
Included tweeting in all cap letters. But, Jake, there's also another sort of stunning anecdote about Kevin McCarthy. We all remember the photograph when just 3 weeks after January 6th, there it is, Kevin McCarthy goes running down to Mar-a-Lago. He's afraid he can't raise money anymore.
And just to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is a lifeline. Everyone thought that the Republican Party was going to rid itself of Donald Trump. Everybody had spoken negatively about him. But then McCarthy does this, and it basically...
But January 6th, pretty complex, isn't it? I think we were all beginning to recognise that it was exploited, that a lot of the reporting was extraordinary, that there were the presence of a number of agencies that day, that it's been used to legitimise the militarisation of the police force, additional expenditure on the Capitol Police, vilification of political opponents, that it's been referred to as an insurrection, although video footage seems not to reveal that. And these are the kind of details that are sort of continually brushed over. But that's a very fine Mar-a-Lago photograph.
He's like Phoenix from the ashes. Donald Trump is renewed.
Correct. And nobody knows this trip is happening. And Cheney writes, actually, when she saw that photo, she thought it was a fake.
Really?
And then she confronts Kevin McCarthy about it, and she writes, get ready, Cheney, Mar-a-Lago? What the hell, Kevin? Kevin McCarthy. They're really worried. Trump's not eating, so they asked me to come see him. Cheney, what? You went to Mar-a-Lago because Trump's not eating? McCarthy, yeah, he's really depressed.
A really joyful chuckle. Oh, depressed, not eating. It's extraordinary because elsewhere in their content, they claim to deeply care about mental health and depression. Michaud there in the chat, day 23 of Russell keeping me awake in my wage cage. Literally, stay awake, Michaud. It's Rational Anarchy says, read Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. I will read that, Rational Anarchy. I will give it a look. And Carl Rhino says simply, Gareth gives my heart palpitations. Gareth, have you been anywhere near the US Navy? Because there's a lot of extraordinary and otherwise inexplicable heart disease going on within that fine institution, let me tell you.
She also reveals that, look, she was not the only one. She talks about other Republicans were, quote, angry and disgusted that McCarthy had gone running back to Trump. And there's a text that's going around, and she writes that her Republican colleagues, quote, some mocked him, circulating that Trump-McCarthy photo along with, get ready, the clip from the movie Jerry Maguire, where Tom Cruise tells Renee Zellweger, You complete me.
Oh.
Very good clip, very good film. More what I think about is when he does the memo and everyone's like, oh, that's a great memo. How long you give him? 6 days. He'll be gone by the end of the week. This is a good bit of propaganda as well by MSNBC. Here they are fear-mongering about hints that Trump has dropped in his speeches that he would use the military to control protests. Now, what I think is interesting about this, and you tell me in the chat whether or not you'd be concerned about this. It sounds like, that Trump talks about maybe the army would be mobilized if there were acts of public protest. Have a listen to that and tell me genuinely what you think. But bear in mind what happened when, liberal politicians like Trudeau shut down bank accounts of people that donated to those trucker protests. Think about January the 6th, where I feel like there's one guy, this Trudeau's been in prison for 22 years, who weren't even there that day. And what about, what's that like dude, Dougie Mackay or Mackie Dougie or Mackie, the guy that's doing I think 7 months for making a meme. You can't attack people for authoritarian language when you run an authoritarian regime, particularly not when it's Trump free and easy at the pulpit. It's extraordinary, this. But let me know where you guys stand, because I know there'll be a variety of opinions.
With a disturbing report on Trump's plans to deploy the military to push his MAGA agenda while cracking down on domestic opponents in a potential second term. It would be an extraordinary power grab, and it's alarming nonpartisan experts. Today, the Associated Press detailing Trump's repeated hints of an expanded role for the...
Hints. You can't build a story on hints, suggestions, a whiff of, the essence of, like the perfume of military.
And the lack of guardrails to restrain him. As Trump and his advisors, quote, suggest they would have wide latitude to call up military units for action inside U.S. borders. And just in case people weren't paying attention, Trump making his intentions very clear. For example, on the campaign trail, Trump complaining that he was blocked from using the military to quell protests in Democrat cities in his first term.
New York City is a crime den. Chicago is a crime den. One of the other things I'll do, because, you're supposed to not be involved in that. You just have to be asked by the governor or the mayor to come in. The next time, I'm not waiting.
Huck Fed in our chat simply posted the word Waco. Presidential candidates say a lot of things and then don't do them. Remember when Biden said he wouldn't build a wall? There's a wall being built. Remember when he said Saudi Arabia would be made a pariah? There are deals being done. Let's have a look at Chris Christie now. He seems like a jolly sort of a guy to me. He's saying that Donald Trump will be a convicted felon in 2024. We've got 15,000 of you watching us now on Rumble. We'll do a couple more minutes on YouTube. Then we're going to invite you to join us in the free speech paradise that is Rumble.
Trump isn't hiding the ball here.
Not you. We want to have a look at Chris Christie right now. Let's have a look.
Are you convinced that he will be convicted of something in all of this?
He's going to be convicted this spring in Washington on the January 6th stuff. And so here we have a criminal enterprise going on at the White House, and we want to send this back? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. And the only reason that there's even context for this conversation is because so many people are also dissatisfied with Joe Biden. You've got two people, both of whom, in my opinion, quite frankly, are too old for the job, who show signs every day that they're not up to the job every day. And so the American people sit there and say, look, what are we going to do with this choice? And that's why I'm out here fighting for this. It's not that I had nothing else to do. I had some pretty nice gigs I was doing that were very enjoyable.
What were they? What were you up to, you soppy sausage? Hey, a lot of you, I can see where you guys are going in the chat. He's not getting a lot of love there, is he, dear Chris Christie? God love him. This is there's a few things that we can show you now. We can show you that the founder of BLM, Black Lives Matter, is endorsing Trump now. Or we can have a look at this story. Let's start with this, and then we'll show you But no, I tell you what, you guys will love this. Trudeau and Trudeau's opposite number, the leader of the opposition, vying for who loves Ukraine more. This is extraordinary. Justin Trudeau it looks like someone pretending to be a politician in a film about politicians. And you can sort of see him almost twitching with glee at how well he thinks this speech is going. It's really, really exciting. Have a look at Justin Trudeau. Let me know what you think about this guy.
But indeed, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of factors that deliver higher food prices, not just for Canadians, for people around the world. And one of the key ones is Russia's continued illegal invasion of Ukraine, Mr.
My God, again, it's Putin's fault, but there is a food crisis around the world. There is an energy crisis, or at least everything's becoming more expensive. But the ability to alloy it to the issue of the day is exemplary.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we can affirm clearly that we will stand with Ukraine with everything necessary for as long as necessary. As we saw last week, no Conservative politician can say the same in this House.
Really exciting. I think he's made his own, admittedly lovely hair stand on end at the back of his neck when he's reckoning, oh, they're standing up. But then have a look at the opponent's party. They're into it as well.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, we are the only party that has stood with Ukraine, Mr. Speaker.
It seems like there's a lot of room for complexity in Canadian politics, except for when they invite a Nazi in there to celebrate, which they extraordinarily do once in a while. Remember that. Let's have a look at a little more rhetoric from Trudeau. He gets really excited here. 16,000 of you guys watching us. If you're watching us on YouTube, let's leave YouTube now before we report on this China thing. Listen, you awakened wonders, how we love you. Join our movement over on Rumble. We can speak freely. We're going to be talking about the Ireland protests, how they are analysing it reductively in order to maintain the kind of globalist tropes that are required to shut down any proletariat uprising. Of course, we disavow all violence in our free speech movement, but it's very interesting the way that the legitimate concerns of ordinary people are continually shut down, and how in a nation like Ireland you can't use the kind of imperialist rhetoric that would be used to condemn, say, for example, American people or British people for being racist, because Ireland has been historically an oppressed nation. You're going to love the bit of content we've made about that, and indeed Conor McGregor's potential involvement in an emergent Irish populist movement. So if you're watching us on YouTube, click the link in the description. Get on over here. We're going to have a little bit more of a chuckle